Hello, I'm Koyo, broadcasting live from the Colourist Center in Kenya. Today we kick off one continent's global coverage, beginning in the United States of America, where a devastating series of fires fueled by powerful winds and dry conditions erupted across Los Angeles area. The infernos have already claimed at least 24 lives, with some victims dying in heroic efforts to prevent the flames from consuming their homes. Hundreds of homes have been destroyed as the fires continue to rage across the region. The situation remains dire, and emergency responders are battling the flames as authorities work to assess the full scope of the destruction. Here's what we know so far. A series of devastating wildfires swept through the Los Angeles area on Tuesday, January 7th, driven by dry conditions and powerful winds. The Palisades fire began in Pacific Palisades and has burnt over 23,700 acres, with only 13% contained. The Eaton fire near downtown LA is over 14,100 acres and 27% contained. The Hearst fire in Selma has burned around 799 acres and is nearly contained at 89%. Smaller fires in the region have been fully contained, but combined burned around 1,539 acres. More than 150,000 people remain under evacuation so far, and orders of around an upward of 200,000 displaced people in some areas though. The wildfires have actually resulted in at least 24 fatalities, 16 from Eaton fire and 8 from Palisade fire. Thousands of structures have been either damaged or destroyed, and the total damage is likely to exceed US $20 billion in insured losses, while overall economic losses could be as high as US $50 billion. Although the exact cause is still under investigation, drought conditions and strong winds are actually believed to be major contributing factors. Firefighters were still trying to douse the flames amid expected wind conditions, while a red flag warning remained in place for much of Los Angeles and Ventura counties. Now, for the past 35 years, China's foreign ministers have begun annual round of overseas visits with a trip to Africa, with Foreign Minister Wang Yi describing the practice as unwavering and unchanging. The top Chinese diplomat made the remarks while meeting with Netumbo Nandi, Namibia's president-elect, during his annual New Year visit. Namibia was Wang's first stop this year. One Continent explores why China's top diplomats always start the year in Africa. China's tradition of starting the year with a diplomatic visit to Africa underlines its commitment to the continent. Foreign Minister Wang Yi said that the world is undergoing profound changes, but China remains the most trustworthy partner of Africa, and the priority of mutual support in development, independence, and international affairs endures. The visit will aim at deepening the cooperation with African nations on top of the strategic partnership with all 53 countries. This year, China is actually focused on the implementation of the concrete plans put forward during the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation Summit, especially in trade, investment, and modernization efforts in Namibia. Wang's week-long trip in Namibia came amidst China's diverse engagement with Africa, having toured Namibia, the Republic of Congo, Chad, and Nigeria. The visit comes at a time when a 3-year action plan is being implemented to advance economic growth, including zero-tariff access for 33 African countries and expanded trade opportunities. With the African economy projected to rise by 3.7% in 2025. This year, China has actually positioned itself as a leading partner in the development of the continent, signaling a bright prospect for bilateral relations in the future between China and Africa. And in case you missed this week, military prosecutors in Uganda have charged opposition leader Kizza Besigye with trickery, a capital offense. Already facing accusations of illegal possession of arms and undermining national security, Besigye has been a long-time irritant to President Yoweri Museveni. Detained in Kenya last November, he was extradited to Uganda to face the charges before a military court, despite being a civilian. Elsewhere, a Tanzanian activist, Maria Sarungi, who was kidnapped by 3 armed men in Nairobi, has been released and is now accusing Tanzania's National Intelligence Service of being responsible for the abduction. She, being a human rights activist, is actually very critical of Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan. She was seized by 3 armed men and forced into a black car in Kilimani neighborhood in Nairobi. This is actually according to Amnesty International. Remember, a wave of disturbing disappearances has shaken Kenya, where a state-funded rights group has reported that over 80 people have been abducted in the last 6 months. The victims are largely government critics critics believed to have been targeted by security agents. Though the authorities have yet to acknowledge any involvement, the abductions began in June during the countrywide anti-tax protest and have escalated this month after social media went viral with AI-generated images depicting the president lying in a coffin. In none of the three cases mentioned above has the Republic of Kenya taken any responsibility of any of the kidnapping or disappearances. However, the fact that Kenya is becoming a hotspot for kidnappers is definitely worrisome and bad for business. One Continent takes a very short break. Stay tuned for more stories from around the world. Welcome back. Now, since the outbreak of war in Sudan in April 2023, the country has plunged into a severe political, economic, and humanitarian crisis with tens of thousands dead and millions displaced. Yet, global attention and media coverage remains scant in comparison with other ongoing crises in the Middle East, such as those in Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria. This raises questions of why Sudan is being neglected and what can be done to reverse this neglect on the part of the international community. Take a look. The current war in Sudan erupted in April 2023 when more than 14 million people, approaching 30% of the population, were displaced internally and into neighboring countries. 11 million people internally displaced and 3 million fled to neighboring countries. The Sudan war, perpetrated by the brutal RSF, has led to mass atrocities that also include mass killing, rape, ethnic violence, and the weaponization of famine. More than 30 million Sudanese people require humanitarian assistance, and famine-like conditions have cropped up in camps such as Zamzam, where children with severe malnutrition actually show up every day. Despite the enormity of this situation in Sudan, the country has garnered relatively little international media attention, eclipsed by conflicts elsewhere, including Gaza and Ukraine. A lack of reporting, coupled with very limited access for journalists, has led to an information vacuum that is stemming international awareness and response. Humanitarian aid is grossly underfunded, leaving millions without essential resources, while the violence goes unabated. The war has further contributed to regional insecurity through destabilization in neighboring countries, influx of refugees, swelling numbers in Chad, Egypt, and South Sudan, and disrupted trade routes, not to mention RSF involvement in illicit activities, further destabilizing Sudan even more. Global media must, in this respect, provide increased coverage, while the international community needs to ratchet up humanitarian aid and try to work towards ceasefire, along with providing long-term support for peace and accountability to the atrocities being committed in Sudan. Now, entering 2025, one thing already stands crystal clear. Climate change is reconfiguring the global workforce. Like the digital or industrial revolution before it, climate change will reshape global economy. The challenge has a dual nature: adaptation to the fast-warming Earth and decarbonization of industries to avoid further climate disaster. That actually will take hundreds of millions of workers who possess the knowledge, skills, and resolve to mitigate impact of climate change while managing businesses, jobs, and careers in this new reality. Climate change is fundamentally changing the nature of work around the world, making adaptation and creation of new roles centered on the mitigation of its effects very necessary. In order to prevent further environmental degradation and to cap the increase in global temperatures, the world must rapidly move toward renewable energy, electrification of industries, and decreased agricultural emissions. This green transition is expected to create 300 million new jobs by 2050. In the US, for example, employment in clean energy grew faster than in fossil fuels between 2022 and 2023, creating almost 150,000 new jobs in manufacturing, engineering, and project management. Now, it's not all about new jobs. Existing jobs in every sector will need to have something green about their skills. Workers in everything, from procurement to finance to facilities management, will be instrumental in systematic decarbonization of the economy. In a bid to help organizations become more sustainable, energy efficiency measures and sustainability practices find their way in many job descriptions right now, such as the rapid rise in this need is underlined by LinkedIn's Global Green Skills Report, which mentions a projected doubling of the green talent pool by 2050 to meet this demand. Fortunately, workers seem to be willing to do just that, with 80% willing to engage in sustainability programs at work and 70% saying that taking climate action in their jobs enhances their drive and personal well-being. Yet beyond individual actions, dealing with the growing dangers of climate change will also take corporate leadership rigorous regulation, and heavy public and private investment. Preparing the workforce for green economy with climate education and green job training is key to confronting these challenges for a sustainable future. As the US Supreme Court deliberates over the future of TikTok, a growing number of American social media users are turning to an unexpected alternative, the hugely popular Chinese app called Red Note. In a surprising move, Red Note shot to the top of Apple's US App Store this week. The app, founded in 2013, has already gained 300 million users in China, according to a research firm by Kevo. Dubbed China's version of Instagram, Red Note is popular for its content on travel, makeup, and fashion tips. While the app has dominated the Chinese market for years, it has largely remained under the radar out of Chinese-speaking communities until now. With the threat of TikTok ban hanging over their heads, American teens are actually signing on to Red Note. The Chinese language popular app is one big act of resistance, a big blow to governmental attempts to suppress TikTok. The TikTok refugee hashtag has blown up on the site, with millions of viewers and users explaining their migration. Many of those users were quite frustrated with the possible ban of TikTok, eager as well to continue into a new social media site. Thus, the new wave of Americans created cultural exchange between US and Chinese online. While some Americans have actually urged others to keep politics out of the app and respect the existing user base, Chinese users have welcomed the newcomers, offering tips and guidance on how to navigate Red Note. Red Note's algorithm, which prioritizes users' interest over who they follow, differs from TikTok's, and some users believe this actually fosters more original content and reduces the influence of major influencers. It's not designed for English-speaking users, which has created other challenges, but it has spurred creative ways to bridge language gaps. Another ByteDance-owned app called Lemonade is actually similar to TikTok, but more about lifestyle content, and American users are actually flogging that too. While these apps may be a new wave of social media in the US, their future is far from certain, especially if government regulations targeting Chinese tech companies extend to these platforms as well. This week's broadcast ends in Los Angeles, where Shannon DeGrooms, forced to flee a fire, was actually helped by NBC's news reporter Ellison Baba. Baba located her home, which had survived the fire, and retrieved medical supplies and family photos for Shannon, offering a hopeful update. Now, for a city recently ravaged by fires, one could still say, with a hint of a smile, that Los Angeles remains the city of angels. That's One Continent for this week. I'm Koyo. Take care.